Okay, Friday, 24th of May, 2024. So, how the Bitcoin standard changes you. So, when you start to understand Bitcoin more and more and what money is, energy and time, as you understand the technology more and you appreciate it and look at the wider world, the macro or microeconomics and beyond, you start to then appreciate the Bitcoin standard itself, going on to it. Start valuing and evaluating your wealth in Bitcoin and Satoshis, as opposed to pounds, dollars, euros, you name it. And that there is a hell of a mental flip. That mental flip will not go mainstream for another 15 to 30 years. We're so early. That idea there, because it takes so much time and knowledge and understanding to get to that mental flip in the first place, to make the flip, all that time, for that idea to be mainstream, 15, 30 years, which shows how ahead of the time we are. Fair enough, because there's a nice meme in the space. You get the price you deserve. Now, Bitcoin standard. Ultimately, you start thinking more long term. Now, disclaimer. Now, I turned 30 6 or so months ago, so maybe I'm naturally thinking more long term anyway, but with age or Bitcoin, they come together. This is what's called a Lollapalooza effect. They combine together into a big crescendo, which is thinking more long term. Meaning, so I think more long term, meaning I'm planning and imagining 3 years, 5 years, 10, 20 years into the future. Even in some distant remote way, trying to make the leap to think 100 years into the future, a dynasty, a legacy, my grandchildren's grandchildren. I had this idea a couple of years ago that in the future, I want to have a nice portrait of myself, a nice painting, that will be hung above a big fireplace in this big house, this big mansion, that the third, fourth, fifth generation, my grandchildren's grandchildren, will look at that and think, oh, thank you, Granddad Adrian, who, died a long time ago, way before we were born, 100 or so years ago, and his actions in the past, i.e. today, made their lives, or our lives in the future, much more comfortable, much more profound, and you name it. That's powerful. Thinking long term. This is a great tweet, and I think I did a video about this. I'm quite confident I did. Back in December, I think. About he who thinks the longest term, he who had the longest time horizon wins. Powerful. Totally agree. Of course I agree. I recorded a video, but the point still stands. That's powerful. When we think long term, we are thinking much more on a grand stage. We're thinking much further into the future. We're taking a much more patient, strategical approach to life. And we're thinking 10, 20, 30, 50 steps ahead, not just 1 or 2 or 3. That's powerful. And then patience is important. Okay, so we're thinking way ahead in the future. There's this beautiful meme. I've mentioned this a few times in the vlogs. It's from Dune. I think it's part 1 from 2020 or 2019 or 2021. There's a woman in a veil, and the subtitles are, "Our plans are measured in centuries." That's powerful. To be thinking 200 years ahead is it requires so much foresight and thinking and strategical planning. It's just ridiculous. It's a whole another level. So that's the first thing, thinking long term. I've always been thinking like this. Again, the disclaimer, always been like this anyway, but it's amplified by being on a Bitcoin standard, meaning long term. And I've always said, thinking long term is the only game worth playing. Fair enough. Now, the other thing is starting to price wealth in Bitcoin. I did a video about this as well a week or 2 or 3 ago, talking about how everything on a Bitcoin standard becomes cheaper and cheaper. Everything around us, everything like clothes, rent, food, you name it, material things, books, whatever else, movies, computer hardware, things, material world becomes cheaper and cheaper. As the Bitcoin, as it's unchanged, it's open source code, as the price of this increases in terms of fiat, pound, US dollar, whatever, notes, it means that 1 Bitcoin buys more things. 2 days ago it was Bitcoin Pizza Day. And there was a great meme, and I linked in the video for the Bitcoin Pizza Day description, saying that in 2010, 2 pizzas, or in the meme, 1 pizza, 10,000 Bitcoin. Okay. But now it's the opposite. I want 10,000 pizzas, please. That's 1 Bitcoin. But 2010, 1 pizza, please. 10,000 Bitcoins. In the context of the meme. That's powerful. That flip. That financial flip. When you start valuing your wealth in Bitcoin, everything gets cheaper. Now, long story short, there's this person I've often listened to a lot called Simon Dixon on YouTube and Twitter and all the rest. For years I've followed him. And he had this principle that I picked up in 2020, which is at the end of each month, always have more Bitcoin than at the start of the month. Always accumulate more and more. And in hindsight, that was a damn good idea for all sorts of reasons. Now, as you start valuing your wealth in Bitcoin, and you start looking at how many Satoshis you have, 100 million Satoshis is 1 Bitcoin. People say, get to 1 billion Satoshis, get to 1 million Satoshis, get to 1,000 Satoshis, get as many as possible. Because each of those Satoshis and Bitcoin will buy more things. Because if that meme said, in 2010, 1 Bitcoin is 10,000, 1 pizza is 10,000 Bitcoin, and today's the opposite, 10,000 pizzas is 1 Bitcoin, then in the future, it'll be something like 1 pizza is 10,000 Satoshis. What's that? 1%. 1% of a Bitcoin, more or less. Yeah. 10%. Hang on. 100 million. So, yeah, not even that. 1% at most. 100 million. So 10 million. Yeah. 1 million. Yeah. Way beyond less than 1% of a Bitcoin. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. And that's the result of Bitcoin adoption. The awareness, understanding, the liquidity getting easier and easier. The infrastructure getting better. More money is going into Bitcoin, because I heard 10 years ago, Bitcoin was also described as a black hole of money. All the money, where fiat goes to die. Interesting analogy. Not exactly in one strict sense, because in every trade, someone buys Bitcoin and they sell for fiat. So that fiat just gets moved hand, just transfers around. So, a good idea. Everything gets cheaper on a Bitcoin standard. That's powerful. And at the end of each month, have more Bitcoin than at the start of the month. Powerful. How do you do that? Earn it, you buy it, you mine it, whatever else. And all sorts of nuances behind that. But the principle is very sound. Have more Bitcoin at the end of the month than at the start of the month. Powerful, it grows. And as it grows, your life becomes easier, richer. You name it. I've noticed personally more confidence. Confidence in the sense of financial worries go down the drain, so to speak. I'm not really worried. Because one, practically speaking, again, practically, the key word there is practically, pragmatic, practically. I can earn the money back. If I spend money here and there on whatever, on experiences or values or things, lifestyle, I can earn that money again in the future through work and business, whatever else. So I'm not really worried. And then I think, well, the last line of defense, the fifth line of defense, in emergency, there's the Bitcoin itself. And that doesn't get touched until way into the future. If you survive on any 3-year time frame, interesting, 3 year plus, 3, 4, 5, of course, the more the merrier, your BTC just goes into profit. Essentially, if you say one mining epoch, so 4 years, or technically 240,000 blocks, you enter, the price movement is so big, the original amount of money you invested, so to speak, let's use that term loosely, could be, you tell me, could be this compared to the price growth. Now, relatively speaking, you tell me, that's for the future to decide, but the point still stands. Things get cheaper on a Bitcoin standard. You think more long term, things get cheaper. These are priceless things. And then I'm thinking about more things I can pass down to the next generation. I got some ideas. This vlog is even one thing. That I more or less woke up one day, 23rd of November, 2023, and I thought, I'm going to do this vlog, daily video of sharing something in life, and it slowly evolved into what it is now. No regrets. Massive library and massive archive of knowledge and value. I did the maths. This vlog so far is roughly 20 hours of non-stop videos. 20 hours I sat down talking to the camera. That's priceless. Thinking way into the future, 10, 20 years from now, daily vlog. Here's this massive catalogue of content. You can learn a lot, watch loads of videos. Priceless, that's amazing. And then also, speaking of long term, I take good care of my teeth. It takes me roughly 10-15 minutes to clean my teeth. I do this and that and that and this and this, all sorts of stuff. Very nice. High standard. So then I was thinking a few weeks ago, what other things in my life could I pay that much attention to in it? Beard, hair, skin, whatever else, just you tell me. Clothes, why not? You tell me. And someone gave me the idea of skin. Okay, so what I want to do sometime is talk to a dermatologist, get some advice on what kind of skincare and what skincare routine to have and to use and take. Good idea. Because the idea here is, one, it's long-term thinking, so I'm taking care of myself. But two, when you're confident that Bitcoin is going to go up and to the right, and in the future it's going to be worth X amount of dollars in 3 years, 5 years, 10, 20 years, you want to maximize, it makes sense to maximize the chances of you being alive in those years. So what are you going to do to maximize those chances? Well, you're going to eat healthy. Well, you're going to exercise. You're not going to do dangerous things. Yeah. You're going to take care of yourself. Teeth, skin, eyes, you name it. Yeah. Because then you could also argue, I'm alive in 10, 20, 30 years, but my quality of life is poor. Why? I didn't exercise. I had bad diet. I'm alive, but I can't really walk. I get exhausted after taking a few steps. What does that mean? It means your quality of life is bad. All the money in the world, all these Bitcoins, all the money in the world, no problems with money, but you got poor health. And that's not thinking long term well enough. Because if you're thinking long term, you're going to think about your health in the future. You're thinking of your lifestyle 10, 20, 30 years from now. Again, what did I say earlier? Plans are measured in centuries. So I'm thinking, what can I do? If I'm thinking 10, 20, 30 years in the future, what do I need to do today that my future self his life is even more comfortable? Makes sense. So thinking long term, pricing and value things in Bitcoin is powerful. Have more Bitcoin at the end of the month than at the start. That way your wealth is always growing, it's increasing. Yes, and that's fundamental as well. And there's some interesting, clever things you could do, but it depends on risk tolerance. But the principle there is have more Bitcoin at the end of the month than the start of the month. Now, I got this idea, as I mentioned earlier, from Simon Dixon. Now, by interesting coincidence, I've kind of discovered Twitter Spaces and started listening to random spaces on Bitcoin just to pass some time. I'm doing something and I want something in the background to listen to. Music, whatever, nice, or something educational. I've got loads of things, but let's give these a shot. And also, lately, I've been feeling a bit guilty by not buying some Bitcoin. Ooh. And then Simon Dixon comes on and he talks about this idea and a few of the things that was nice to hear again as a good refresher, a good reminder of the fundamentals. And then he mentions, a few of the keywords. And that got me thinking, what's an automatic way of acquiring Bitcoin? Automatically, passively, whatever else. So I get some ideas here and there. Okay, fine. So even by being on a Bitcoin standard, I'm looking at ways how to refine the strategy or my strategy, how to improve things, how life tomorrow can be better. Again, thinking long term. Powerful, powerful way to look at life. Again, it's the only strategy worth playing long term. The only game worth playing. So how a Bitcoin standard changes you start valuing your wealth in Bitcoin. Things get cheaper. You become more confident. You think more long term. You don't go back. You don't go back to a fiat standard, or dollar standard, pound standard, euro standard. You do not go back. It's a one-way door. Yeah, it's powerful. And as I said earlier, this mindset, this attitude will not go mainstream for 15 to 30 years because it's so unusual and it's such a high barrier to entry in terms of education and time and understanding, even humility. This thought process, being on a Bitcoin standard, will not be a normal thing for 15 years, at least 15 years. We are that early to the space, basically. And then you could say we've hit the inflection point, which is when the ETS came out back in January 15th, I believe it was, or 11th, I can't remember. January, the inflection point is here. And now, as Saylor talks about the gold rush, between roughly now and 2034, when things change again, when 1% of the Bitcoin is outstanding to be mined, then yeah, that's going to be a new world then, which makes sense. So the future is now. The future is now. The future is now. If you're humble enough to accept it, well, that's another conversation. Yeah, Bitcoin does humble you. Could be the topic of another video. But nonetheless, you will see me tomorrow.